Yo, what's good everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I'm going to give you my starts of the week for week 10 of the 2022 fantasy football season. Before we get into it, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content. It helps a lot. And with that being said, let's get right into it. We're going to go position by position, starting with quarterback, and I feel like this is a guy that I talk about each and every week because coming into the season, he wasn't viewed as this dominant every week starter. But that's pretty much what he has turned into this season. Tua of the Miami Dolphins has been on fire. He's been absolutely insane lately. And he gets a good matchup in week 10 against the Cleveland Browns. So I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. He's been hot, and I expect him to continue to be hot with those options, with Tyreek Hill, with Jalen Waddle in the passing game. I'm expecting huge things out of Tua in week 10. My next quarterback start of the week is in the perfect situation for a humongous blow-up game, and that is Justin Fields, quarterback of the Chicago Bears. Since week 5, he has been absolutely on fire. He's pretty much unstoppable for fantasy. He's using his legs, which is awesome to see. If you look from week 5 until week 9, he has increased his points every single week, culminating with a week 9 performance where he had 42.7 points in whatever format Fantasy Pros uses. I started him in one league over Kirk Cousins, and he just went off. Once his game was over, I knew I won. And in week 10, he actually does have a chance to continue the trend of increasing his points. I know it's completely unrealistic to expect him to score 40 plus fantasy points. That's pretty much an outlier performance, but he gets the Detroit Lions, who cannot stop anybody except the Green Bay Packers. Go Vikings, let's go, baby. But I think that defense for Detroit is still bad. The Packers just have their own problems to worry about. But at this point, Justin Fields is an every week start, and especially when he plays the Detroit Lions, you have to get him in your lineup unless you have a Mahomes, Josh Allen level quarterback. And Josh Allen might not even play. So with that being said, Justin Fields is pretty much a lock for your lineup at this point. Speaking of the Detroit Lions, we're going to talk about one of their running backs as we move on to the running back starts of the week. And we're going to talk about Jamaal Williams, running back of the Detroit Lions. So DeAndre Swift has returned from injury, but Jamaal Williams has still dominated touches out of the backfield. I'm not sure how that trend is going to continue moving forward, but it looks like DeAndre Swift is not at 100%. So until, Jamaal Williams isn't getting this crazy volume out of the backfield, he's someone that you could start each and every week. The Chicago Bears supposedly have improved their numbers against running backs from the start of the season, but I still think that this is a matchup that shouldn't be too tough for Jamaal Williams. And with the volume he's getting, I just kind of wanted to bring him up as someone who, you might have viewed as a player that you cannot start since Swift returned, but it is anything but that. He is still very involved in the offense. And I think the Bears will put up points, and if the Lions can keep up, it could be a somewhat high-scoring game here because both teams have had hot stretches this year. So if they both hit, there could be a lot of points put up on the board. And with Jamaal Williams as potentially the lead back yet again for Detroit, I like his chances to have a nice little performance for fantasy in week 10. Fantasy football is a funny thing when you can put Jonathan Taylor in a start of the week video and not get flamed for it being too obvious, because Jonathan Taylor, since week 1, he has had a season to forget. I have him in 3 out of 3 leagues, 1 dynasty league, 2 redraft leagues, and he has just been killing me. He's been killing fantasy managers who took him 1st or 2nd overall or spent up in auction drafts on him. But in week 10, it's looking like he is projected to play after missing week 9. He also missed week 5 and 6. But in week 10, he's been practicing a little bit, so if he does play and is not limited, he gets a great matchup with the Las Vegas Raiders, who can't really stop anybody, and the Colts are not going to be able to throw the ball. I mean, if there's any team the Colts can throw the ball on, it'll be the Raiders, but I still think this offense is going to have to go through Jonathan Taylor, and he should be used in the passing game enough to be solid for fantasy, but this could be a get-right game for JT. If he doesn't have a good game this week, I don't know when a good game is going to come. But I am starting Jonathan Taylor in pretty much any situation, unless you're just absolutely stacked at running back or you have an elite flex option. But I think Jonathan Taylor has a good chance of having a bounce back week. I'm hoping and praying, guys. Now we're going to move on to wide receiver. We're going to talk about another player in that Detroit-Chicago game, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. He ended last season just absolutely on fire, and he started this season continuing that trend of being amazing for fantasy. He had 16.4 and almost 35 points in half PPR. Then it's cooled off a little bit, okay? He had that little concussion that wasn't a concussion situation where he missed most of, I believe it was week 7, and then he's come back since then, and he's been okay, but not great for fantasy. But if you look at the numbers, he's seen 10 and 9 targets, 69 and 55 yards. That's solid. You know, like a receiver isn't going to go out there each and every week and put up a huge performance unless you're like Cooper Kupp. So I think Amon-Ra is due for a big game. And with the targets he's getting, and I already talked about this game in general, it could be a higher scoring game. I think he has the potential to have a big game in this matchup. And at the very least, he will be safe for fantasy because when he's on the field, he sees a healthy amount of targets. And if he gets in the end zone either of these games, you're looking at him as a must start. So, you know what I mean? Either of the previous 2 weeks, if he just gets in the end zone, you're like, oh, he's back, he's elite. And I do still think he is elite. He just isn't having that, you know, absolutely on fire streak that he had a while ago. But I think he's still basically a must start option at this point. And like I said, guys, I must like this game because a lot of my starts of the week are from this game. But again, I'm not trying to give you obvious starts of the week either. You know what I'm saying? Like I try to give you guys that maybe you don't think are start worthy, or maybe the narrative changes with them. And that's kind of the case with Darnell Mooney. Is to start the year, you know, based off of last season, he showed he was talented. We thought he would kind of continue to be a solid fantasy option, but he started really slow. That Bears offense looked dreadful. Justin Fields looked like a total bust. He could not get the ball to any of his receivers, and they weren't even throwing the ball enough to like where you could really trust any of their receiving options. But lately, Darnell Mooney has actually been pretty solid for fantasy. I'd say since about week, 6, he saw 12, 6, 5, 8 targets, a healthy amount of targets, nothing too crazy. This isn't like a wide receiver 1, but this is someone you could flex or put in that wide receiver 2 or 3 spot. But, Justin Fields is playing really well. The Bears are scoring points. He's put up over 50 yards every week since week 4, and he got in the end zone last week. So again, this isn't like a guy that you're going to start over a locked and loaded wide receiver 1 or anything like that. But like last week, I started him with a bunch of players on bye. I felt comfortable with it, and he came through, got in the end zone. And in week 10, he gets a good matchup against the Detroit Lions. I know that they have Chase Claypool on the roster now, and eventually he will be more integrated in. But it's going to take some time, and I think Darnell Mooney is pretty much the most trustworthy option on this team right now at the wide receiver position. So I would fire him up with, I'd feel pretty good about it, and he does have that potential to have a big game. If this, game against Detroit does have a lot of points scored. So Darnell Mooney is a nice solid play in week 10. Now we're going to move on to tight end, where we're going to talk about Greg Dulcich, tight end of the Denver Broncos. I know it's surprising, not a Chicago Bear or a Detroit Lion. But Dulcich, since he has started playing this year, the rookie tight end for Denver, he's been nothing but great for fantasy. In half PPR, he's been a tight end 1, a top 12 tight end every single game he's played. And in week 10, he gets a nice little matchup with the Tennessee Titans, who have given up some points to tight ends on the season. So, obviously I'm not going to tell you like start Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews or guys like that, because those are obvious starts. You're going to start them every week. I'm trying to give you someone that maybe you are not considering. And Greg Dulcich, even though rookie tight ends don't usually perform well for fantasy, he's been doing it, and I see no reason to not continue to trust him unless you have a really reliable tight end option, like a Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, a guy like that. So if you don't have that tier of tight end, I think Dulcich is a nice little streaming option. He's been good. He's got a decent matchup. So I would fire him up with about as much confidence as you can have with a streaming option in this tight end landscape. Those are all of my starts of the week for week 10. If you enjoyed that section of the video, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel as we now move on to our recap of week 9, because I like to look back at the week before and see how things went, see what went well and what could be improved. So in week 9, my quarterback starts of the week were the same as week 10. I went with Tua and Justin Fields. Tua was a great call. He was the quarterback 4 on the week. And then Justin Fields, he was the number 1 overall quarterback finish on the week. So obviously we nailed that. We had 2 top 5 options as my starts of the week. And I'm going to keep probably including them in my start of the week videos until it gets to the point where it's like, hey, you're starting them every week, which they probably already are at that tier. But I'm going to at least ride it out for one more week because I like to be accurate for you guys. And I just want to wake some of you guys up who don't realize what these guys are doing, okay? Now moving on to running back. I don't know why I typed in Jamaal Williams. I was looking at the wrong list. That was for this week. A player that I said to start last week that didn't work out very well was Raheem Mostert. I guess he was still a running back 2. He did get in the end zone. If it wasn't for that, he would have had a horrible week, but he had 8.6 points for fantasy. So we got bailed out with a touchdown right there. I won't lie. And Aaron Jones, I mean, I almost felt like I was cheating bringing up Aaron Jones as a start of the week last week because he's probably someone you start most weeks anyways, and it's one of the best matchups in all of fantasy against the Detroit Lions. But he came out and he went 9 for 25 on the ground, 2 for 20 through the air, only 5.5 points in half PPR. So I guess that call just didn't work out. But I mean, I'm gonna start him in that situation 10 times out of 10 unless I have an absolutely stacked running back core. But I really have no regrets about that. That's more on the Green Bay Packers not utilizing him properly. At wide receiver, I said to start Josh Palmer last week, filling in with no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams, and he was a wide receiver 1. I started him in one of my leagues, and it paid off for me, so I hope you did as well. He was 8 for 80 through the air. He saw 10 targets. Oh, excuse me, he was 8 for 106 through the air. I was going to say, how does this make sense? 14.6 points in half PPR, so you can't really ask for much more than that, guys. That was a great performance. And then Christian Kirk, my other wide receiver start of the week against the Raiders. He was the wide receiver 5, 17.6 points. So we had a very good week last week. So far, so good. Things went very well. Then finally moving on to tight end. Zach Ertz was someone I said to start in a great matchup against Seattle. He was a tight end 5. He did get it in the end zone, 12.5 points in half PPR. And then Isaiah Likely, I said to start him if Mark Andrews wasn't playing. And I said you could pivot to Gerald Everett if you needed. Or sorry, not Gerald Everett. That's my other start of the week. To Jawan Johnson if needed because it was a Monday night game. But Likely ended up getting the start. And we did get lucky, kind of like that Mostert call. He only was 1 for 20 through the air, but it was a touchdown. And that's good enough to be a top 10 tight end. So tight end is a gross position, but that worked out. We got a little bit bailed. And then my other tight end start of the week didn't work out as well. Almost a top 12 tight end, but not quite. Gerald Everett of the Chargers. He had 8 targets. It only turned into 5 for 36. No touchdowns. So it wasn't a horrible call. It just didn't really work out this week. 6.1 points. You would hope for more, but I would say week 9 was a very good week for us. But week 10 is going to be even better. And that is going to conclude our start of the week video for week 10 and our recap of the starts of the week for week 9. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said before, please make sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for more fantasy football content. And I will talk to you guys later. Good luck in week 10. Peace out.